Good evening, everyone. Welcome to round three of the Italian Youth Debate Championship, the English section. I'm Alessandro Finocchiaro, and I'll be the chair in the judging panel for this debate. Today, we're going to watch Team S Cool as proposition and Team Cavour Debate Society as opposition. The motion is as follows. This house would require all foods already on the market to undergo the European safety assessment currently mandated for novel foods. With info, novel foods refers to foods introduced in Europe from May 15, 1997, whose marketing is currently regulated by regulation of the EU 2015-2283. I now ask the judges on the panel to introduce themselves.
Hi, I am Anna Maria Rossi, Liceo Marinelli, Udine.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marta, and I will be one of your panelists today.
Thank you. Now it is time for team members to introduce themselves, starting with Team Proposition.
Hi, I'm Chiara Marinari. I will be the first and third speaker of the Proposition team.
Hello, my name is Theodore Max Gravina, and I'll be the second speaker and there you go.
Thank you. Now with opposition team.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Anna De Marco, and I'm going to be the first speaker of opposition team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alesia Maria Tamas, and I will be the second speaker of opposition team.
Good evening. I'm Bianca Dell'Agnola, and I will be the third speaker for opposition team.
Thank you so much. Well, everything is in order, and we are ready to start. So I give the floor to first proposition speaker.
Okay, so I'll start. Wait, can I put the app? So the timer.
Yep, of course.
Sorry, I forgot. Okay, here we go. So my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So, dear honorable judges, dear debaters, today we'll be talking about the motion presented to us. So, this House would require all foods already on the market to undergo the European safety assessment currently mandated for novel foods. I don't think it's necessary to bring any further definitions. I would just like to consider a term which will be EFSA, which is the European Food Safety Authority. That is the organization which takes care of safety regarding foods. So our debate will be organized in 3 theses. So first of all, the one that I will bring forward to you will be the injustice of the selective scrutiny. So why the current system is outdated and a perfect breeding ground for unloyal competition. So then we will have a second thesis, which will be retroactive assessment for legacy foods. For legacy foods, we intend all those which are not novel foods, obviously. And so how we can prevent harm before it even happens. And as our third thesis, we will have restoring public trust in these types of organizations. So I would like to start with presenting our first thesis, so the first one, and we'll talk about the injustice of selective scrutiny. What does this mean? So we know that the novel food framework pivots from one day, the 15th of May, 1997. But this date cannot be seen as one date which has completely revolutionized scientific knowledge. What does it mean? Even if a product which has landed on a market before this date could have the same risks as a product that has touched the market after. So I think we know that right now safety assessments are in place for every new product, meaning every innovation. This is in Europe. This means that for any new food, we have to have from a 1 year to a 2.5 years of evaluation, and a cost from the industry that wants to bring this product to the market of about from 100,000 or more euros. This, first of all, means that innovation is pulled back, because we have a perfect example of this type of new protein called Cavour. This could have been a perfect substitute for soy-based proteins. We all know that soy-based proteins have a bad effect on our health, because they increase estrogen levels in our bodies and can lead to cancer in women and other serious problems for our health. But Cavour, when it hit the market, had an 18-month process and a total cost of investment for these security checks of about $180,000. This means innovation will always be taken aback. But how can we stop this? We can stop this if there will be competition again. This means legacy foods have to have the same process as novel foods. I don't mean that we have to go back and reanalyze and re-examine every food that we had on the market before 1997. I just mean that sometimes periodical checks, just as we do with novel foods, could make the market a bit more competitive and could make Europe a better place. What do I mean by this? So first of all, if we didn't have these safety protocols, our health, the population's health, would be severely touched. And how can we know this? We can see in the US, they have much less strict safety protocols. And unfortunately, we all know that health in that country is a major problem. We know how crowded hospitals are, how the excessive consumption of some products, which in Europe aren't consumed, has had problems on Americans' health. So a solution cannot be to get less safety procedures, but it could be making a regular and more fair market by insisting that all produce has the same level of security checks, of safety concerns. Because let's just think about palm oil. We all know palm oil is a problem for our health. It has a really high level of saturated fats, and that will be a problem for cardiovascular health. We also know that at high temperatures, it can form a compound called glycidyl fatty acid that can form cancerous cells. The EFSA knows this. We have had analysis and lab reports which confirms this issue. But why can't we do anything about this? Because in reality, it is not a novel food, and the health concerns aren't seen as dramatic to eliminate it. So we all know that palm oil still circulates freely. But why is this? Because why should a company that produces an innovative food, an innovative product, something that could actually make our lives better, that could make us live up to the standards of other countries when it comes to innovation? We don't think that Europeans should have better safety standards when it comes to certain foods, but less innovation, less possibilities for our industries to thrive, because we have better security concerns. And if we eradicate this to every legacy food, everything that has entered the market from before the laws, from before that we even knew that we had some safety issues, some concerns. Tell me why in third world countries people have eaten things like insect flowers for decades, for centuries. But now, when they try to distribute it to our country, when they try to distribute their culture, we have to put them on another standard than what we always had. That is probably much more dangerous than the new products we are trying to introduce. Laws can have flaws, and laws can be changed. We just have to put a foot forward and do our best. Thanks.
Thank you. Speech was 8 minutes, 4 seconds long. When the judges are ready, I'll wait for a sign from them. Okay, so now it is the time for first opposition speaker. You have the floor.
Okay, so my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Okay. Good evening, dear judges, fellow debaters. Welcome here. So I'm the first speaker of opposition team, and I would like to divide my speech in 3 important parts. I will rebut what the opposition team just said, and then I will introduce the first 2 arguments of our line. But firstly, I would like to clarify something that op team expressed. So the opposition team actually didn't give any forward definition to novel foods, and well, that's not how the debate works. We have to clarify our playing field, and that is like thrilling because it's giving for granted information that in the following speech were not clarified. In fact, they mentioned the European Safety Authority, but what they said was never developed. So yeah, we know what European Safety Authority is, but nothing. I will take that later, please. Then they claimed that the date is not revolutionary and that other foods can have harms, but that is not true. And I will explain it in my first argument. And then they cited like palm oil. But if we are talking about foods that are produced in Europe, palm oil is imported. It doesn't stand their argumentation. Okay. Then I would like to move forward to our first argument, which will prove that the policy is unnecessary because long-established foods are already proven safe. Foods that have been consumed for decades or centuries provide world safety data far stronger than the foods that are tested in labs. And we can take an example like staple foods like wheat, rice, dairy products, such as also cheese and yogurt, that have been consumed across generations, and there was no harm widespread. Forcing these foods to undergo to novel food assessment would repeat work already proven by centuries of studies, and that would be like a waste of time. In fact, this policy is designed for types of food that do not include every single one. We would be putting foods through unnecessary controls. And that's what we need to focus on mostly. So that is. Then I will move to I would like to take the POI of the pro team, if they agree. No, there was no POI. Okay, sorry. Then I will move to my second argumentation, which is the policy would prove to be a waste of time and resources. Let me introduce data. Under the current EU novel food framework, evaluation take a really long time. We know that the analysis of 292 applications show that the publication of the results of these controls are around 31 months, which is more than 2.5 years. So right now, novel food assessment are already slow and resource intensive, which means that if we need to assess all the foods, it will take a really long time. And that's what will cause. It will cause massive backlog. In fact, regulatory authorities would be unable to process the enormous workload. And then also it will be a waste of human capitals because scientists and reviewers would be overwhelmed by their works assessment because of course they need to assess it properly and it will take time. And then it will cause a market paralysis because businesses would be blocked from selling staple products because they would be waiting the approval of scientists who are overwhelmed by work. Then the costs that will be high can make the reassessment inefficient. In fact, even under the old system, novel food application would cost from 20,000 euros to 45. Imagine this for a novel food and then multiply it for all the foods in the market. It will be a really big cost. And companies often spend millions of euros on research and development before seeking approval. So this would add additional cost for the compliance. And it will have an enormous impact on economic strain on producers because the cost of 1,000 of food would run into 100 million euros, and also it would slow the small producers because small companies, small businesses have limited budgets, and the cost would be prohibitive. That's the main impact of our two arguments. So to sum up what we have said, we have proven that the policy is unnecessary because we have histories of research and controls that prove that the foods before the 1997 date are safe. And we made some examples. And then we also proven in our second argument that the policy would be a waste of time, resources, and human capitals, bringing up example of EU novel food framework, which is reliable indeed. With this, I conclude my speech. Thank you.
Thank you. The speech was 8 minutes long.
Hello, may I start?
Not yet.
We have a problem with the audio, so is it fine?
Yeah, as long as we can hear him, yeah. Are the judges ready? Okay, so now we give the floor to the second proposition speaker.
Hello, everybody. My speech will commence in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable judges, and fellow colleagues, I am here to, first of all, I would like to correct the first speaker of the opposition team. As she said that we do not start a debate by not specifying what the keywords in the motion are. And the truth is, the novel foods was already specified in the motion as the judge said. He told us what novel foods were. But you also explained it in detail. My other speaker explained it a bit in detail. And so I think that instead of correcting us on the point of view that we didn't say we didn't explain the key word, you did not say your 3 argumentations and what they were going to talk about. Now, you also said that it was going to be a waste of time, a waste of resources to start this whole project to go under assessment every single product. And on that, I do agree with you. It is a waste of resources, but not a waste of time. Because as we know, these foods have undergone assessment in a period where science was not as evolved as the science that we have in our day. Is that correct? The science in the 80s is not comparable to the science of 2025. It is not a waste of time because everything that we do, also, if I may, to protect the world, the ozone layer, we're not only doing for ourselves, but for our future generations. And this we would be doing not only for ourselves, again, but for the future generations. Okay, now I will start with my 2 theses, which is the first, my second thesis. The first thesis is the core idea is very simple. Some foods sold on the EU market have been checked using a different science than today's. So it is not technically cannot be considered safe. This was because it was proved years ago, as I said, using science criteria that was not the same as today. So what we propose is retroactive assessment, which is applying current rules and science criteria to other products that were released, that went on the market before the 15th of May, 1997. For example, in this way, with today's science, it's easy to find nanoparticles. Nanoparticles are tiny particles that have the diameter that go from 1 to 100 nanometers, which is smaller than the diameter of a hair. By going this, we've also seen in today's science that nanoparticles hurt your body on a long-term point of view because they may affect you when you consume the product, but they may be affecting you 30 years later with genetic mutations. This has happened before. But not only that, it has, like we said, long-term health effects and population-specific population risks. In fact, the EFSA not only keeps in mind the danger of a product, but it keeps in mind the danger of a product compared regarding certain groups of people. For example, groups of people like pregnant women, breastfeeding women, but people also take medication constantly. People who have chronic diseases like diabetes, kidney diseases, and also children that are way more sensitive to certain products, clearly. So the EFA actually has recently also strengthened its safety, making all of this possible. For example, they made more toxicological data, and they have a better analysis of exposure levels. So if we were to put these products under EFSA assessment, yes, it would be it would cost us a lot of resources, but it would not be a waste of time. It would be a perfectly logical thing to do. Anyway, my second thesis is restoring the public's trust. Many people today consume products that, well, they don't know, that they're not aware of the potential harm it could do to their bodies. This sort of destroys the people's trust with the EU. So what the EU is trying to do with this project would be, yes, to restore the public trust, because they would do this retroactive assessment with complete transparency, correct? By having no double standards between old and new. Now, all foods also would be judged on today's scientific criteria, and the safety agencies would operate independently of interest, right? Because they're safety agencies, and they only worry about clearly about the people's needs. Now, so these were the two theses, and it's clearly very important that we apply this because we've said that they have long-term diseases that can affect you with all the different things. Like I said, nanoparticles. For example, an example of a dangerous product that went on the market was Wolfosa globula, which was a sort of plant, if I may, a sea lentil, that if consumed in large quantities could intoxicate you because it had a very large amount of what's it called, of manganese, which is a toxic element that could hurt the body, as we said, especially on pregnant women, on children, on breastfeeding women, because if breastfeeding women were to intake any of this, it could bring fetal diseases, as we said. So anyway, it's a very important thing that we do this, and it is not a waste of time, and it is mandatory. It is also important then because we're preventing harm before it happens, and so this is much. May I end?
Okay, thank you. The speech was 6 minutes 21 seconds long. Okay, I think we're ready for second opposition speech. So you have the floor, Alessia.
Okay. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Hello, dear judges. Hello, fellow debaters. I'm the second speaker of opposition. And today I will tell you more about our third argument. The policy disproportionately harms small producers and reduces food diversity. But first of all, I would like to rebut what the first and second speakers of proposition team said. First of all, you said that it will be a waste of resources and money. So you agree with our second argument, but you said that it won't be a waste of time. Do you know how much it takes to make this process happen? It takes even 6 years. And in 6 years, it can happen a lot of things. For example, it can start a war. Our economy can change. So 6 years is a very long time. Then you said, the second speaker said that it may take 30 years to harm your body. A food can take 30 years to harm your body. But for example, let's think about tomatoes. Even our grandma or grandpa ate tomatoes when he was young, and they're still alive. There is no case when someone died because of foods, or maybe there will be some sicknesses because of that. Then I would like to start with my third argument. So, mandatory safety assessments would be disproportionately burden small producers and traditional food makers, systematically disadvantaging them and accelerating the loss of food diversity, cultural heritage, and local economic resilience. The European Novel Food Assessment process is designed to ensure consumer safety, but in practice it imposes high financial, legal and administrative barriers to market entry. The process often requires detailed scientific dossiers, laboratory testing, toxicological studies, legal interpretation of regulatory frameworks, and ongoing compliance monitoring. These requirements translate into substantial costs and long timelines that can stretch over several years. Large multinational corporations are structurally equipped to handle these demands. They operate with dedicated regulatory teams, legal departments, and research budgets that allow them to absorb compliance costs and distribute them across high production volumes and multiple markets. For them, safety assessments are an expected part of doing business. Small-scale producers, by contrast, operate under entirely different conditions. Artisanal food makers, family-run businesses, and traditional producers typically work with limited financial margins, minimal administrative staff, and production methods rooted in tradition rather than industrial standardization. For these actors, mandatory safety assessments are not simply an inconvenience. They can represent an insurmountable barrier that forces them to exit the market entirely. Crucially, this creates an uneven regulatory landscape. The policy does not regulate food products according to actual risk alone. It regulates according to the economic capacity of the producers. As a result, foods made by large corporations are more likely to reach the market, regardless of how processed or artificial they may be, while traditional foods with long histories of safe consumption are excluded due to procedural and financial constraints. For example, let's consider a small family business producing traditional cured meats using regional techniques passed down through generations. These products may rely on specific fermentation processes, local microflora, or herbal preparations that do not fit nearly into standardized regulatory categories. Even if such foods have been consumed safely for centuries, the producer may still be required to finance extensive testing and documentation to prove their safety under modern regulatory definitions. Similar challenges affect producers of herbal teas, fermented drinks, traditional cheeses, or region-specific plant-based products. A small herbalist selling traditional infusions made from locally gathered plants may suddenly face the prospect of costly assessments simply because the product does not align with standardized industrial food models. Unable to afford compliance, these producers may be forced to stop selling, scale down operations, or operate informally outside legal markets. Meanwhile, a multinational company can introduce a highly processed or synthetic alternative, fund the required assessments, and legally dominate the market, despite offering a product that may be less culturally meaningful and not necessarily safer in practical terms. So, of course, this has a bad impact. The cumulative effect of this regulatory imbalance is a gradual erosion of food diversity. As small producers disappear, so do the unique flavors, techniques, and regional identities embedded in their products. Food becomes increasingly homogenized, shaped by what is the easiest to regulate rather than what reflects cultural richnesses or traditional knowledge. This loss extends beyond taste and choice. Traditional food production is a form of intangible cultural heritage closely tied to local history, geography, and social practices. When these foods disappear, communities lose more than products. They lose knowledge, identity, and continuity. Economically, the policy contributes to increased market concentration. As regulatory barriers eliminate smaller competitors, large corporations gain greater control over food markets. Reduced competition can lead to higher prices, less innovation, and fewer incentives to prioritize quality or sustainability. Over time, these monopolizations weaken local Okay. So what happens for the average person? For the average consumer, the consequences of this policy may not be immediately obvious, but they are deeply felt over time. Many small producers would be unable to afford or navigate the assessment process and will stop selling certain products. Local markets, specialty shops, and even supermarkets would gradually stock fewer unique regional and artisanal foods. Traditional products and once defined local cuisines may become unavailable or survive only as expensive night items. So, mandatory safety assessments, while well-intentioned, risk creating a food system that prioritizes bureaucratic compliance over cultural, economic, and social value. The policy disproportionately harms small producers, accelerates market monopolization, and erodes food diversity and cultural heritage. Consumers ultimately pay the price through reduced choice, higher prices, and the loss of meaningful food traditions. Without receiving consumerate benefits in protection, food becomes more uniform, less diverse, and increasingly disconnected from the communities and cultures that once shaped it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The speech was 7 minutes 55 seconds long.
Guys, if I may, if you want to make a POI, just open your microphone and say POI, because most of the times the debaters are on a different tab than the one the meeting is actually happening on, so they don't see you if you just put your hand like that. Just say POI out loud, otherwise nobody will hear you.
Okay, I think we're ready for third speech of proposition team.
So my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So hello, I'm the first speaker of the proposition team. So first of all, I would like to say something on what the speakers of the opposition team said. So first of all, I would like to denote something. The first speaker of the proposition team said that she would explain to us why, in their opinion, no other food other than novel foods is harmless. We didn't get that explanation. I think it would have been really interesting to hear why you have that opinion, but okay. So next, I would like to say something on what your second speaker said. So the thing is, cultural value is always important, and no one says this will be lost. But the thing is, our health is much more important than anything else. So I was thinking about this example. I think you all know that there's Slovenian cheese, of which I don't remember the exact name right now. Yes, the one with all the worms in it. That was
POI.
I accept.
Do you prefer being healthy over have a high knowledge?
Well, first of all, I don't think cultural foods are all of our knowledge, and I don't think this policy, I will explain why later, would completely eliminate our culture and our knowledge. But yes, I prefer not to die than not have a lot of knowledge, honestly. That is my opinion. If you have another opinion, it's completely fine, but this is our point of view. So the thing is, sometimes 100 years ago, producers did not care about what they put on the table. They put whatever thing cost the least. But I forgot that thing I was talking about. So that cheese was a huge part of our tradition, of Sardinian tradition, of one of the most eradicated Italian cultures. But the problem is, it was really dangerous. And could we continue eating it? For the sake of culture, we know it exists. Probably someone produces it in their own homes, but that is an example of something which could not be acceptable for our safety standards. The thing is, when we talk about traditional foods, we also have to talk about families, companies who want to produce traditional foods in 2026. And why should new companies have much more difficulty entering the market than old companies? Because that's kind of contradictory on what you said, simply because older legacy products, legacy industries probably have more chances of being monopolies than newer industries on the market. I can make a personal example. I come from a village in a region called Campania, in which a traditional food is an extract of sardines. we have a lot of new industries, new families who made a business out of this. They did what they had to do. They made sure to follow safety protocols, and they made sure that the product they were putting on the market was a safe product for consumption. I unfortunately didn't really understand your three theses, so I cannot exactly recap what our rebuttals would be, but I would like to kind of tell again what our opinions would be, what our point would be, why we think that every food should have a safety assessment. Just because, first of all, as I was saying, market equality is really important. We cannot live in an economic society in which old companies will always have a bigger revenue than new countries, because this is what makes a market unequal. This means if novel products have to be reassessed every year or so, and legacy products can be put on the shelves and never have a reclaim, only if someone gets seriously sick. And in most cases, this isn't really, if someone gets in the hospital because something happened, they have to sue a company that will probably have enough money to completely destroy their argument. We all know how the system works, and we all know sometimes we have
Yeah,
I accept.
Okay, we're talking about diseases, but you know that a disease is caused not only by what we eat, but also by other factors.
Oh, yes, surely. I know diseases are a general thing, but we are talking about diseases caused by food. So I'm talking about the cases in which someone ingests something that causes a serious problem to his health. Maybe also someone who is on a particular medicine, and that medicine has a negative effect on what they eat. I don't know if you know this, but most dairy products will have a countering effect on antibiotics. Most people don't know this. This isn't put on milk cartons. This isn't put on most dairy products because these are legacy foods. In Italy, especially, we consume a lot of dairy. We consume a lot of meat-derived products. We don't actually know what the effects are. And I'm not telling you should not eat them. I'm telling you that we all think it would be better for everyone if everything was more clear, if everything was subjected to the right analysis. And I don't mean wasting years and years and money and resources. So first of all, we're talking about high-risk products. So obviously, we're not going to subject every loaf of bread to EFSA analysis, but just products in which we know that ingredients contained in them can be dangerous for a human's health. We know it because new technological advances told us that. But in most cases, legacy products containing these ingredients will not be tested under safety assessments. And then our last argument was restoring public health. So I think this is really important. Our government, our society, what we eat, the whole market, it's all complicated mechanism, which all, after all, fall into how much does the population trust you? If companies are not clear on what they put in our food, if the government isn't open to make us feel safer on what we eat, if we feel the need to check and recheck, and we're always scared that something could happen to us, there's a problem. And sometimes time and resources have to be dedicated to the public's health, because that's the most important thing. The most important thing is making sure everyone in a country feels safe and knows that there's someone always looking out for them. So thank you so much. I will
Thank you. The speech took 8 minutes 2 seconds. Okay, so now we'll move on to the third speech for opposition.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, judges and fellow debaters. I am the third speaker of the opposition team, and I would like to debunk some things that have been said in this debate. First of all, I'd like to specify that the EU as we know it is, what, a little over 20 years old. We cannot be talking about some 100 years ago or even the 80s when it comes to safety controls, because there are European safety controls that are not extended to novel foods, that are actually routine and designed to be routine. And I would like to kind of start from the third argument of the proposition team, which is about the public's trust. Now, data says that the current public has a higher awareness than ever about the dangers in food. And what they are most worried about is microplastics. And you're right, that is a quite modern concern. The issue with the solution you present is that there are already norms in place to check for microplastics, to check for contamination risk, and to check for hygiene risk. So we already have controls. There has been a really big misunderstanding in the pro team that is acting as if these foods, these legacy foods, have never been subjected to any controls ever again, and they need those controls, because the motion says the controls in place for novel foods. The other issue with the pro team is the fact that the controls for novel foods are deliberately not meant to be routine, and they are deliberately not meant for these types of legacy foods. They are meant to be for new foods, they are meant to be long, and yes?
But I would just like to know, why do you think that foods put on the market after the 15th of May 1997 have completely different rules and different products in them than those who were put on the market in the day before that?
Well, that's the date. That's the date. That's a standardized date. And that is the standardized date, and it has been and it has worked so far. So again, I would like to continue by saying that these controls are very expensive, deliberately, very long, deliberately, and very conservative, and they are explicitly not meant to be routine checks. The first speaker pro has specifically mentioned they need routine checks. Those controls are not routine, so we will be arguing a completely different motion. Then I would also like to highlight the fact that this is a very technical motion, and it's easy to lose ourselves in it and think about some very, very technical facts. But we need to look at what happens to the average person, to the average consumer. How will this impact a normal family going to the supermarket? First of all, since they are very long and very expensive, there could be temporary shortages. That, of course, higher prices, because it is the producers that pay for the controls, not the EU. And as we have already said in our first argument, they are very, very expensive. They can cost up to 45,000 euros. So there will be higher prices, naturally, and then with time, less choices on the shelf. So what the first speaker pro said about more competition, new ideas, new companies, does not work because there will be less choices directly. And also on the fact that all of these new innovations that pro team like to talk about, how would these producers be able to afford these checks routinely, with prices that always get higher and higher because they need to always make more and more in more time? Then we would also have duplicated evidence, because again, there are checks in place. We would be doing something that would give us no returns in terms of safety, no returns in terms of health, because they are already checked, will give us actually less choice, also reduce, as we said, cultural food and small producers with no major safety gains at all. So I think the biggest issue with this debate and the biggest misunderstanding is thinking that the norms for novel foods are universal. They are empirical and they work for any other food, but they don't. They are specifically designed for a certain category of foods. And the date that we argued so much about for some reason, it's a standardized date that's been chosen by the European Union because that's probably the day they signed the deal or the day that they decided a standard. It's not some gray magical thing. It's just a standardized. Also, I would like to I like something that the first speaker pro said about palm oil. We know about palm oil. It's not been hidden from us because it's a legacy food. We know. Think about all of the things that we buy that specifically said there's no palm oil here or like palm oil free. We have done something about palm oil because we know that it's bad.
POI.
Yes, of course.
Yes, but the thing is, if that was a novel food, the difference is, do you know that novel foods, if they have certain ingredients, if they have certain risks, they will not be put on the market. That industry will fail. Legacy foods will have a warning. People will try not to buy them, but they're still on the market. So you know that there's still a health risk. There's still a possibility of developing cancer by consuming those products. Information cannot be a solution.
But foods can be taken off the market. Foods have been taken off the market before. We know about many foods that have been taken off the market in the past. It's not something that can change. It's not set in stone. Once we realize that there are safety issues that we can see through the routine checks that we do, because we do have routine checks in place, we can take it off. Foods have already been taken off before. And also, there was an example mentioned by the third speaker pro that talked about her family, a lovely story. Thank you for saying that. But she also mentioned that her family made sure that their food followed the norms, followed their controls, and was safe to eat. So we do have controls. So we do have norms to follow, even for traditional foods. So we can acknowledge that there are norms in place. Okay, then I would like to continue by stating once again, what would be the impact on the average person? How would this impact us directly? First of all, the prices will be higher. Everyone would suffer, from the producers to the consumers. The producers will not be able to afford the rapidly rising prices of these routine checks that they want to put in place, and the consumers will not be able to afford buying them. Then there will be even less choice on the shelves, which is something that we both want to avoid because we know that diversity is important. There will be even less choice on the shelves. There will be even less competition, and the bigger firms, the bigger corporations will dominate the market. And that's something both teams can agree is bad. That's not something we want. And once again, these checks, these norms are deliberately low, they are deliberately expensive, and they are deliberately not made for this kind of food. And with that, I would like to end my speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The speech was 7 minutes, 36 seconds long. Okay, so now we're ready to listen to opposition reply speech.
Okay, so I would start in 3, 2, 1. Okay. What intense debate here tonight. I thank judges and also the both teams for listening to us. And in my speech, I would like to report all what were the point of clashes I met in the debate, and I'm going to show and prove why we won here. So there was a bit of confusion between the definition and the playing field because it was not really clarified. We talked about novel foods, yes, but extended on a universal world, even though Europe is clearly mentioned in the motion. So our team tried to show what would really be harmful in Europe because, well, this motion had borders, and also some other clashes that proved our point of view were the time and the money, and also money intended as resources in human capital, but also in material resources, because we proved and we showed that the time would be really harmful, and also the money spent, counting that the European Union has to face a lot of expensive imports and political investments. And also there was a sort of intense point of clash in the date. The date is clarified clearly in the motion as May 15, 1997, and there was too much confusion over before, after. We are leaving this motion from May 15, there is a time where novel foods are investigated. If the others don't agree with it, it's not our problem. We proved our arguments starting from this date. Okay. And then also we would like another point of clash was the consumer point of view, and also the last one I detected, because both teams cared about the safety of our consumers, and we brought up scientific harms, but our team tried to focus more on the matter of the motion, which was the practical and technical operation that this would bring. And we also try to show that the consumers are safe. We are safe. We are living in a world that is luckily safe, thanks to the protocols and the controls we have made in so far. We've done so much progress, so let's not waste it in other regulations. So that is what I would like to clarify, and that is. Thank you.
Thank you. Speech was 4 minutes, 9 seconds long. Now we can conclude the debate with proposition reply speech.
My speech will commence in 3, 2, 1. So yes, there was some confusion, I have to agree, on your part. First of all, if I may, you guys, as we said before, never really clarified your 3 theses. You said them, but at the beginning, after you blatantly said that we didn't describe what novel foods were. You went on to not describe what your 3 theses were. But that's okay. Let me just do a recap of what we had to say. First of all, proactive reassessment, we said, right? Assessment, Proactive assessment. It is applying the current rules or criteria, science criteria, to products that were already assessed. These old foods are obviously outdated, right? Because they were assessed using a different science than the science we have today, right? I think we can all agree on, as I said before, that the science of the 80s is not the science of 2025. And this is why it's easy to find today, foods that are dangerous for our body, because they contain, as you said, microplastic, nanomaterials, anything that is harmful for our body, anything that can cause us diseases, right? And you guys also did a POI talking about how diseases aren't only caused by food. And we're talking about food poisoning, clearly, right? Because food poisoning is what causes disease from food. It's just a very straightforward word. And now, the second thesis we said was restoring the public trust, correct? Many people aren't aware of what they eat every single day. They don't know the materials and they don't know what's in there. They may know a few of the ingredients, but maybe the poisonous stuff, maybe anything that was from the 80s, they don't know anything that is poisonous. They clearly don't know, right? So with this proactive reassessment, what we are trying to do is trying to make it transparent and take down any double standard between old and new. Also, all foods have to be judged on today's scientific criteria clearly. And the safety agencies always operate independently of interest, right? So no corruption, if I may, nothing that has to do with, they operate in the people's name, for the people, not in their own interest, not for money, not for anything else. Finally, the other thesis was unfair marketing, right? Because there are the new producers that invest in EFSA assessments, which are expensive. They need long authorization timelines and scientific rigors. Instead, established companies retain the right to commercialize products approved decades and decades ago without modern security. So all their old products, all the products that they had from the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, haven't gone through modern security, and so they don't know if it's safe to eat, if it doesn't cause any harm. We said many foods contain stuff that are cancerous cells that bring you anything like tumors or anything that's dangerous for your body. So yes, what we're thinking is this. It may be a very, very long time and expensive, and a very big amount of resources are needed. But it's important for the generations that come after us, not only thinking about ourselves, but the people that come after us. If you want to rebuild a new world, it starts from us, not from the people that come after. Thank you. My speech is finished.
Thank you. The speech was 3 minutes 56 seconds long, and we have ended this debate. So thank you very much. And you can make a round of applause to each other for having survived this debate. The panel will now meet and decide the call for this debate. So I'll ask you to wait patiently for our coming back.